welcome to Note Doctors. My name is Paul.
My name is Jen.
My name is Ben.
And we are your hosts. We are all university music theory instructors who are passionate about music theory and music theory instruction. In this podcast, we will be talking about all things theory with some of the best music theory teachers in the country. If you want to know more about music theory and the most effective and innovative ways to teach it, this is the podcast for you. Welcome back to our last episode of our first season of Note Doctors. Thank you so much for tuning in. We have made it. Not only have we made it to the end of our first season, but we have, well, for at least one out of the three of us, have made it to the end of our semesters, our academic year 2020-2021. We are at the very end, and so we are just very grateful. How does it feel, Ben? You're actually done. You're the only one that's officially done out of the three of us.
Yeah, it feels good. I like to actually use the term done. One of my TAs refused to use the term done because it was either done or not done. But I fully embrace the term done, and I am feeling very euphoric that I am done.
Oh, that feels great. I'm looking forward to it. This is my finals week, so I have just a few more exams to give, and then grading, and then we'll be done. How about you, Jen?
We are in the last week of class, so I have 3 more days of class. And I told Theory 2 this morning, I said we have entered the stage where everything is countdowns all the time. So I have 3 more teaching days. I have, 6 finals to give. This morning when my alarm went off, I was like, I only have 9 more 5:30 a.m. alarm moments. So, we've reached the final countdown, I guess, quite literally.
Yes. Yeah, I've finished much of the grading. I have my sheet right here of all the things I have left to do, and so with my red pen. But I thought we would kind of close out this season, I guess. We didn't really know actually how many episodes we were going to do. In all honesty, we didn't know how long this was going to last, how long we were really going to be able to keep it up. We're just like, this is a fun idea. Let's just do it. And we ended up recording 16 episodes from September through today, which is the beginning of May. Basically every 2 weeks, and of course we did not make it this week because life, finals, all these things, but we've had a great time talking with a lot of different folks from all different types of universities, mostly from the United States. We had someone from Canada, so we're gonna have to change our little lead-in from theory teachers from all over the country to expand that to the continent or North America. And so it's been great. I mean, what have you found kind of inspirational or meaningful talking to all these different folks?
It has been great. To all these people out there who are listening to us, thank you. And we are so grateful that you've been tuning in. And this, man, I think the challenge here is that every interview left me inspired and excited to go back to the curriculum and look at it again, to go back to the classroom and do my best work our guests were really great. They were so warm and open. They shared really incredible ideas, and that inspired me every single time. And I, like a true nerd, have listened also to every episode. And after the fact, even though I lived it once, I went back and listened again. And but often much after the fact, because my podcast queue is very long. I listen to a lot of podcasts. And so oftentimes it would be months later and I would get inspired all over again, even though I'd already heard it once. I know that I've done a lot. I've always tried to be intentional about what repertoire I put in front of my students, and I've been working hard to diversify the repertoire in my classroom for several years. But this year, I've done that at times 10 in comparison to previous years, and a lot of it was these conversations that made me be like, no, I'm going to stay at work another hour and find that example that works perfectly and is not just yet another Beethoven sonata. And there were lots of those too, but that was one big kind of inspiration this year. And I don't know, for me this year, I needed a lot of inspiration. It's been a crazy year, and we're back face-to-face, which is on the one hand really incredible, but on the other hand has had a whole range of challenges that I've never had to face or think about before. And so having these conversations reminded me of all the things I really love about what I do, and got me really excited about our curriculum and what we teach, and the fact that it's going to be an ever changing, ever growing work of a lifetime kind of thing to do this work that we do.
Yeah. Wow. I agree with all that. That was really well said, Jen. And yeah, thank you to everyone who is engaging with our podcast in lots of different ways and from lots of different places. We appreciate you. Mm-hmm. I would say that for me, it's kind of this process of going back to the drawing board. Jen, you kind of said something similar, but I think it's really important that, like, the moment that you think you've kind of made it as a teacher is like kind of the worst thing to ever happen to you, because you want to keep going back to that fundamentals. You want to keep going back to what is it that we're teaching, fundamentally answering that question. A lot of our guests, just if you look at all the threads that are kind of running through the motifs, I guess, of our podcast, you could say, diversifying not only our repertory, but the way our curriculum is structured, and the way we're teaching things even too, is so important to just go back to that drawing board and reinvent yourself. Like Jen said, you may have taught it 10 times, but let's hope that the 10th time is better than the first time. We all hope that that's true. And that's one thing why we're here. That's why we're talking to each other. And that's why we're talking to, all these colleagues across the U.S. and Canada, and hopefully more. And to get that 10th lesson to be better, to get that 20th lesson to be even better, even more artistic, even more creative, even more engaging, all those kinds of things that we really just strive to do on a daily basis. Yeah, I've revisited a lot of the thoughts that we've had later on with my TFs and tried to share that with them, and said, hey, let's try to do this as a project, or let's try to do this as demonstratable skills, or let's try to do this particular thing as improvisation now instead of this, and just see what happens, and just try and be okay to try new things and fail. I mean, better, our dean likes to say this, so I have to give John Richmond a shout, I guess, is that he says that if you want to be better, you have to be different. If you keep doing what you're doing, it's not going to be better. You can guarantee that you're not going to be better if you keep doing the same thing over and over again. So you at least have to try, and you may miss the mark by a little bit, but I think through the efforting and the trying, you will eventually find that mark, and get towards the target, which is great pedagogy.
Yeah, I think we've seen that with so many of our guests. We're all kind of early career faculty members, I suppose. And so ish. We like to think they're young.
I think I'm the oldest of us, so I'll take the ish. I'll own it.
But to talk to a Gary Karpinski, or Elizabeth West Marvin, or Jenny Snodgrass, Blaise Ferrandino, these folks that have Gina Root have been teaching for years and years, and they're still asking questions. Gary Karpinski is still asking questions about the best way of doing things. And so this idea that that the goal is really for us to find this perfect model, or to get to this place where we have got it, is not healthy, for one, and not going to lead to good teaching. And so it's been great to kind of just to hear these folks, and that are more experienced and still have questions, and are still trying things, are still engaging, and still excited to teach fundamentals, and asking to teach fundamentals and those things. Because that kind of checks yourself. Because I know when you first start out, you're like, oh, I'm teaching fundamentals. You're like, man, I can't wait till I get to teach Theory 4, or an advanced theory class. And then you talk to Jenny Snodgrass or Gina Root, and they're like, fundamentals is the best. And you're like, oh, maybe it is. Maybe I need to check my own bias, and really think about is it my own attitude, or that I have that is kind of keeping me from engaging with this material. And so and I've loved learning about where these faculty came from. So many of them had these different backgrounds. I think only a couple were like, yeah, theory is what I wanted to do.
Right.
Richard Desenord was like,
Right.
yeah, when I was 12 or maybe it was younger, it was like 9, I was going to be a theory professor. Like, what? But so
amazing.
many came into college, thinking about, music ed, or, they wanted to teach band, or, Jenny Beavers, like, wasn't even into theory in undergrad. And then she's like, well, let me find something. So I think that's exciting to think about when we look at our own students and think, well, maybe you don't know where these students are going to end up. And so you hope that you can be a mentor for them, because you don't know where they might end up in the future.
So true. I was thinking about it too, as we were looking back over the list of everyone that we've talked to. And I've just been so amazed and grateful that everyone we've approached has said yes. Even if they've had to say later, they've all said yes. And they've all been so willing to come on and share ideas. And that's been incredible too.
Yeah, because we're still nobodies, but we were really nobodies like a year ago. And
we literally were like, let's make a list of people who are friends of ours who we can talk to on this podcast. And then as the year went on, it ebbed out, and there were more people. I had met Danny Jenkins, for example, like once, I think maybe at AP. Just in passing. I mean, he may have recognized my name, but also maybe not. And and now I'm eager to see him and have coffee the next time we're all at SMT. It's been a great year of just meeting new colleagues from all over the place and lots of different institutions. And
I remember seeing that Betsy Marvin started following the Note Doctors Facebook page and telling you all, like, oh my gosh, Betsy Marvin, she's following us on Facebook. Do you think she would come on or come on? And she was great. And actually, I had her come and talk to my Theory 4 class, because we use the Clendenny Marvin. Yeah. And she answered questions, and it was great. And so they got to see, a real theory book co-author, and talk with her. So it was great. Yeah, it's we already know this because we've been to conferences and we know how it works, but we oftentimes get this feeling of these authors or these theorists, these scholars are somehow different than kind of us, but we all, everyone mows the lawn, everyone has to do laundry, so it's okay to reach out and I think these folks are all excited about pedagogy and want to share that. And I think this has been a great opportunity for them to do that.
Definitely. I've taken a lot of what we've done, and immediately, like the next day in Theory 2 or whatever, been like, okay, now here is a thing we're going to talk about today. So what have you guys applied in your classrooms? What has gone from Note Doctors directly to either Zoom or a classroom of some kind?
Well, I think one was when we had Blaise Ferrandino, and he talked a lot about how we confuse assessment with outcomes, and how in his when he was talking about dictation and is really getting a perfect dictation the main idea, like and really that's kind of the outcome, but that's not really the assessment. We're assessing kind of how well they hear and their understanding of these more basic fundamentals, and not focusing so much on like, well, did you really hear the difference between that half diminished fully diminished or half diminished seventh chord or fully diminished seventh chord, and like rather than kind of harping on those really nitty gritty details, like focusing more on like, okay, well, let's listen for, did you hear that leading tone function, and these types of more general things that are going to be more useful to a student beyond just, can I hear the difference between these two chords? So I think that has been something I've tried to think a lot more about when I'm teaching dictation, and like, what's the main thing that I want the students to understand, and focusing on that rather than, well, let's listen to this chord one more time. You hear that major third instead of that minor third above the fifth? Do you really hear that this time? Because I honestly don't really know how to teach that, really, like other than, right. Just listen to it a lot. But that's not the main point. Listening for function, listening for guide tones, keeping do, these kinds of things, and celebrating those successes And I'm not sure how well I'm doing that in as far as the assessment, because it's hard to know how well a student hears without when they get it wrong, right? We don't know if they're actually hearing it right, but just making a mistake, because we can't get into their brain. But I think I am trying to think more about ways of trying to assess in a fair way that addresses getting things right or wrong, but also addressing like they're getting the main idea right. Can you give partial credit, or can we acknowledge that they are getting some things right rather than just it's right or wrong, and that's it. So that's something that I have tried to take away from these podcasts.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say for me, it's like the improvisation is the biggest thing. Improvisation and short composition. Like that's something that's doable, I guess, in the middle of class with reflection time, or either, I don't know, some way I can see what they've done a little bit and reflect really quickly on what they've jotted down, even if it's 3 or 4 measures at a time, whether it's a melody or changes or whatever it is. And the improvisation aspect, I mean, I'm completely changing RL Skills 1 to include improvisation every single class, because I think it's that important. And I've tried to challenge myself to improvise every day. It's been really hard. I don't know if some of you know the YouTuber that does a song a day. I think he's done a song a day for thousands of days now.
My God.
But you can follow this guy on YouTube. Jonathan Mann, I think his name is. I hope I didn't get the name wrong, but yeah, it's difficult to improvise. I mean, maybe that goes without saying, but when you truly try to make something different than you made the day before, it's tough, because I think for me personally, I just default to like this kind of set of idioms that I'm most familiar with. Like, I think anyone would probably do that. But then when you really try to challenge yourself to go beyond that and then listen to music, you want to listen to music that stretches yourself too. It's kind of like this cyclical process of, okay, I improvised like this today. How can I now expand my kind of capacity to improvise better? And I think the way you do that sometimes is just stretching your listening, or your way of thinking about music creation. Which I'm like, wow, this is just such an engaging activity. This has to be done every day, and whether you're completely new or whether you're really, some people come, I think, as freshmen, especially to North Texas, with a lot of improvisation experience. Some people come with none whatsoever, and to give those people a chance to kind of do what they do, that's totally possible in like an RL Skills 1 class. You can have somebody improvise something very basic. You can have somebody really go off and improvise something more complex, and they can still be both getting a lot out of that activity in that same time period. So I just think it's just such a win-win. Going back to, of course, John Mortenson's episode, super inspiring. Also, I would say
you're going to have them improvising portamento? Is that what's going to happen? strict 18th century.
Yeah, I don't know about that. But some sort of improvisation. The way I've kind of envisioned it is like different styles, that like there are these kind of unit by unit different stylistic improvisations. Only one of which may be actually, kind of Euro-centered, I guess. I don't know. It's something in the works, that I want to expand on.
Yeah, that's something that I want to explore too, because improvisation is not just jazz. And I know, like, at North Texas, like, jazz and improv is the same, but improvisation is not. You don't have to swing. You don't have to know how to read changes to improvise. And so we have a huge music therapy department, and being able to improvise, play by ear, is a huge part of doing music therapy. And so I'm actually in the works of redesigning Theory 4 to be more applicable for our music therapy faculty or music therapy students. And so I'm also thinking about, okay, well, we're getting rid of pitch class set theory and things like that, and we're going to be doing a lot more improvisation, a lot more popular music, and probably doing like another theory class that would get into more kind of tonal stuff, which I really enjoy. But at the same time, these students need to have this improv skill. And and why wait till Theory 4? Get it in Oral Skills 1, just get them singing and playing. That's great.
Definitely.
So one of the things I mentioned this before we started was thinking about the diversity. And we've had, as I mentioned at the very beginning, we've had 16 episodes. We've had 14 guests. And I was putting together our little logo with and normally I have our guests, their picture next to the logo. And I thought I would make I'm trying to find it here so I can share it with you guys, but I'm probably not going to be able to do it in time here. But I made a little montage with all of them here. Okay, let me see if I can do this. I can share this with you so you can see it. And I noticed something really kind of interesting, that we had male and female guests, and by and large the females had just these headshots, very kind of professionally done. The male theorists, a little bit more diverse. Some of them were kind of the headshots like you'd get at school, but others were like, just these casual shots, or maybe in the classroom, or maybe even silly, or just kind of looking away from the camera. All of the women are looking straight at the camera. And I thought, this is kind of interesting. And these photos were given to us. So so it wasn't like we just scoured over the internet and found the most random picture. This is these images that these our guests wanted to have us use, and it was just so fascinating that there's this and Jen, you can talk to us about this, but there is this need for female academics. I mean, maybe theory, or just I think probably just all in academia, of this making sure that they look as professional as possible. And there's these kind of there are these standards, I think, that we hold women faculty to, that we don't do for male. I think that's men. I think that's definitely the case. And I just noticed that with these pictures, and I was like, wow, that is just kind of an interesting thing. And it's not just theory, but probably across the board. And I'll find this picture so I can send it to you guys.
It's really striking.
Yeah, it might be across the board, although I think music theory could have something to do with it, in that, our field is 75% basically male. And so we are not just a minority, but big time a minority in this field as women. I don't think that there is as much sort of latitude for us to, or margin of error for us, or something like that along the way. There's a feeling of how you present yourself has to be perfect, because if you make one mistake, it could ruin, your opportunity to do what you've been working so hard to do. I think, I think even as we've had these conversations, there have been times where I've been talked very frankly about something, and then later thought, oh, should I have said that? Or should I have, and have done a lot of after the fact wondering about whether I had said too much or too little, or so I think, and knowing too that that people are listening to this, and some of them know me and many of them maybe don't. And that definitely is something that has crossed my mind. I know when we did Lee's episode, and we talked about, I mentioned that I had been mentored at one point not to write a pedagogy dissertation. And said that I actually thought that ultimately probably was good advice, even though it's sad advice. I think that the intention of it was good, and that it reflects something about our field, which is that pedagogy, at least at that time, I was writing my dissertation, finishing it. I finished it in 2014. So that's not that long ago. And at that time, pedagogy was still something that people were saying it's dangerous. It's dangerous to go down that road, especially as a woman. right?
Yeah.
You have to be taken seriously in order to get a job. And so,
Wow.
yes, I think that has something to do with it. And I think the fact that, so let's say, for example, we were in music therapy. I don't know what the breakdown is there, but I'm going to guess that there are probably more women in music therapy than there are in music theory. I could be wrong, but
I actually don't know. But I would guess yes, simply because it aligns more with helping professions. And in general, helping professions are largely, female, identify as female dominated for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that, in that world, maybe there's a little more latitude for people to show more of their individual self or their creativity or their, or I think about my colleagues who are singers, for example, there's like a lot of female singers. It's a much more, there's women and men who do that work. And so, some of them have very traditional headshots and some of them have really, unique to them sort of headshots. And I think there's more space for that there. And so, yeah, even, I'm sure people have figured this out, but you guys are two very good friends of mine. I feel very comfortable with you. I'm never worried about saying something, but that awareness that lots of people listen to this, that my dean listens to this sometimes, that, those kinds of things, or my colleague right. at work who teaches theory has mentioned several things about episodes to me, and that's fantastic. But it gives me this sense of wanting to represent myself in the best possible way. Yeah. And that being something that I'm sort of constantly editing for fear of doing it incorrectly. I mean, I know that's not just something that women struggle with, but I do think that being a minority, being, one of 25 when one of 75 are men, does make a difference. It does make a difference.
Yeah, I'd mentioned before we got on the recording session that I saw a Facebook post about just academic dress, and it was a female that posted it asking, what do you wear to work as a professor question. And she noticed this trend at the end of her post that was like all of the older white males almost dressed down, and then all of the females felt like they were dressing up, and that was, seemingly across fields, a trend that was very striking. Like I said right at the beginning, it's very striking to think about that perception. And
you want to talk about privilege, when I was like on the job hunt, I was often going to this website called The Professor Is In, and she's still around. She's her first name's Karen. I can't remember her last name, but she does stuff on Facebook, and she basically wrote about tips and things to help you on the job market. And those things were incredible, like how to write a CV, cover letters, interviews, how to negotiate. And I think she works basically as a consultant these days, in doing that work. And and she was incredibly helpful for me, just because we don't usually get that type of information when you're in your doctoral program. Shockingly, why doesn't anyone tell you how to do an interview? It's like, well, just go get it, just do it. But that was so helpful. But there were numerous posts on what to dress, like what to wear if you're a woman, on heels, on the type of coat, on the type of handbag. And I'm like, that's crazy. All the things that you have to think about. It's like, if you're a dude, just wear a suit. All right. No one's going to look, but bad or good at you, just wear a suit. And, depending on how high your heels are or the color, you got to wear boots or you got to think about the weather, and, don't wear open toed shoes, and don't have a skirt that's too high because someone, so many things.
Or even, I have female colleagues who went to interviews and had the great debate of, do I wear my wedding ring?
Yeah.
Man.
Right. Because someone might think, well, are you really going to stick around, or,
Are you about to start a family and then you're going to be gone? Or are you, Are you looking for a job for your spouse? It raises all these questions.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I've ever heard a male colleague wonder if they should remove their ring at an interview.
I've never heard it.
I've never heard that either. And so, I mean, those are the privileges that a man has in this type of work.
Yeah, totally.
But yeah.
Anyway.
Anyways, what happens when you look at headshots and you're like, oh, it's kind of interesting here. Yeah. And that's something that we want to continue working on and being better with this podcast and bringing in more guests that are from a diverse backgrounds, whether that's gender, whether that's ethnicity, nationality, race. And we want to continue doing better with that for sure.
Definitely. I had one more thought on gender diversity and this podcast, which is pedagogy focused, and that's that it's complicated for us because so many pedagogy scholars are women. And so I think it's been good. I remember early on, maybe Blaze's episode, I feel like, Paul, you said something in passing, like, it'll be good to have like some male colleagues who are doing work in this area come on to the podcast. I remember thinking like, yes, that's absolutely true. It's kind of this strange fact, but a lot of textbook authors, a lot of, the people who are researching and writing about pedagogy topics are still breaking down along gender lines. So having the two of you be interested in doing this and have these conversations and having, male guests come on and be really excited about pedagogy is also important. It's also important. So, yeah.
I'm just not the token white male. Ben and I aren't the tokens.
You're not token to me.
No, appreciate that. But I think you're right, Jen, in that going back to your own dissertation experience and pedagogy being this, unfortunately, this field that's for kind of feminine, and maybe that's just along with the teaching again. It's this. If you're going to teach, you're going to be a female, but then, if you're going to be in administration, it's like, with public education, Ben, your wife is a public educator. My wife's a public educator. Most of the public educators are female, yet when you get into the administrative ranks, all these men show up. Like, what's up with that? Right?
Everything changes. Yeah. Doesn't match up whatsoever to the people who are in the classroom, in the trenches, we might say.
Yeah. And so we've had a great time. This has been a wonderful, one of the few wonderful things about 2020, 2021 has been able to do this podcast. And just to echo Ben, I really appreciate all the people who've listened and surprised how many people have listened. And so Jen, you in the spirit of the podcast, you actually have a rapid fire question for us.
I do.
We really don't know what this is, by the way.
Yeah, we actually don't know. So
no, they really don't.
I need to come up with one too.
Oh man!
All right, so lay it on us, Jen.
All right, so here we go. What are you changing in your curriculum, fall 21?
Oh well. I mean, I already said my Theory 4 class.
Right.
And so
I know.
As
we were talking, I was like,
said it.
They're ruining my rapid
fire. The improvisation thing, too. That was my big... Well, I can add one thing.
Okay.
I actually started a thread with Richard Desenord after our conversation because I was really intrigued by one thing he said about the Avengers theme where it starts in a minor key and then borrows from major. I feel like I totally focus way more on borrowing from minor in a major key, right?
Yeah.
And I've got these examples from Legend of Zelda and all these games and media themes in Disney and, but like, I think 80 to 90% of them are, starting in a major key and then borrowing from minor.
Yeah.
And he brought up such a great point. So I kind of went searching and I found more of these opposites of what I might try to call like this kind of heroic modal mixture where you start in a minor key and you get like this big major 4 chord. And I think it's a John Williams thing for sure. Like it happens in Ray's theme, May the Force Be With You, Avengers theme, and Koji Kondo does it.
That also
Zelda.
happens in I heard it through the grapevine.
Heard it through the grapevine.
Because minor 1, major
Another
4.
one. So, I'm going to try to get a better balance of modal mixture, whether it's borrowing from major, in addition, inspired by Richard,
Yeah.
I will say.
Beyond the Picardy third.
Yeah.
Yes,
exactly.
exactly.
Yeah.
That's
Which
a good
I don't
title.
even
Beyond
count.
the Picardy third.
Yeah. I don't even count the Picardy third because it's from like pre-tonality. So why are we including that? At Modal Mag, never understood that. But no, I actually this year completely changed the way that I taught modal mixture because I teach it a very particular way in jazz.
Okay.
And I had this epiphany moment one day in jazz theory this semester where I was like, why don't I teach it like this in my other classes? It's much better, So I have this, basically, I talk through the ways that modal mixture happens rather than being like, you can borrow any chord from minor. I have like a list of the ways that it happens. And one of them is in the predominant area in minor, borrowing law from major.
Yeah.
But the more that I've kind of taught the jazz class, the more I've found modal mixture has very specific ways that it happens. We tend to teach it as though, just no matter what, you're stealing from the, the parallel key, you're bringing it in, you're using it. But it's very particular. It's either like as a predominant or it's part of a plagal motion at the end of something, or it's the like flat mediants oftentimes together, or it's a deceptive resolution to a flat 6. Yeah, so there's a number of things like that. It's major 4 turns to minor 4. That is like the most common one in popular music. It's a descending chromatic bass line, right? So I teach them these ways and then they learn to write them out, and they're so much better at recognizing them. So I actually did it. I taught it that way in theory too. And right away they were like, oh, well, that's the plagal. Oh, well, that's 4 turning to minor 4. Like they got really fast at it. And I was like, I don't know why I wasn't doing this way the whole time. Not even borrowing from somebody else. I'm not using my own good pedagogy in my other classes. So,
that's great. It's because it's putting it in the context. Like it's connecting the horizontal and the vertical, and it's not just these individual chords, just middle. Right. That also helps you avoid getting those weird flat 7 chords like that.
Oh, I teach that one. That one's actually really common, but it's always around 4. So you get 4 flat 7 7 1. It's a 5 substitute, and it happens all the time in popular music.
I just say we're in
and I taught that one. Yeah. And I aligned it with, I was like, this comes from, it's basically like moving into Mixolydian mode. So then we're making that tie back. But yeah, anyway.
That's good.
Modal mixture, what do you know? There's also that old, Ben, here's another example for you. That old like rap version of Summertime that came out like maybe 10 years ago. It starts out with minor 1, major 4.
Really? Okay.
I'm pretty sure, yeah.
All right, legit.
There you go.
So there you go. There's another one.
On the phone.
Jenn with your old school hip hop.
I don't know.
Oh, that's so good. Let's see. Do I have a rapid fire? I have a rapid fire question. Let me think. Okay, I think I have one. All right.
Okay.
Is there a genre or style of music that you want to dig into more of? Like, is there something that you're going to use maybe the summertime to explore? Maybe it's something that your students are into, or maybe it's just something that for your own research or for just your own edification. A music, a style, an artist, something that you're gonna like. I want to dig into that more.
I already knew my answer. Do you know, Jen? Do you want to go?
I do, but you can go.
Oh, Steel Pan for me. Lord Kitch. Who's Lord Kitchener Roberts. Yeah, my goodness. What an art, really. I've just gotten into it a little bit. Well, maybe you know this. Maybe a guest know this or not. I don't know. I grew up in Baltimore, and a lot of the public schools there have steel bands. So some of my good friends back in Baltimore, they play in steel bands, and such a great art. Obviously born in Trinidad, and a lot of great artists, I feel like, are not known to any of our students, I would say. I've introduced Lord Kitsch to a lot of my students in office hour, which have been one-on-one, socially distanced and masked, of course. But I've introduced Lord Kitsch to a lot of my students, and, they really love it. They're like, well, this is a great tune, and it kind of works in also, improvisation, tune changes. There's just so much to it, and the scores are not, there are a lot of arrangements. The scores are not easy to get, but Mark Ford, my colleague, has graciously allowed me to look at some of his stuff, so I don't have to do my ears will not be smoking so much from work, but only a little bit maybe. But I do have to figure out what tunes to really dig into. But yeah, for me it's Steel Pan, for sure, no question.
That's cool.
Excellent.
That's very exciting.
Yeah.
So I have two, actually. Because I teach jazz theory, I've slowly across several years analyzed like quite a bit of the real book, so that I can take examples to them of things that happen often harmonically in jazz and of different kinds of substitutions, chromatic lines, things like that. And so I am looking forward to this summer, like really digging in. The goal I set, we'll see if it will happen, because you know how summers go. You're like, I'm going to do 100 things. And at the end of the summer, you're like, I really did those 2 things. But I am hoping to analyze literally all of Real Book 1. And I have enough of it already done. And then sort of categorize things, make an index of sorts. And it could even lead to a research project. I think that jazz is understudied and studied in sort of strange ways at conferences. I've seen interesting like Schenker graphs of improv solos. I mean, hey, that's cool. But like, the charts are often the starting point for a lot of this. And there's even some interesting stuff in, like one of my students was talking to me about how this one particular kind of Latin jazz is really misunderstood by the real book. So just looking for some of those conversations to be able to have in class. That's one thing. The other is I always ask my students at the beginning of every semester what they're listening to right now. And then I go listen to it.
Yeah.
And in my Now Theory 2 class, I had them in the fall for Theory 1 as well. But in both cases, 90% of the students told me that the thing they listen to the most is musicals. So I was like, okay, I need to get more of that rep into my classes. The students are connecting to that music. So I've ordered a bunch of like big anthologies of 2000s, musicals. And I'm going to do a bunch of analysis and pull examples and find ones to put into my classes.
That's awesome.
That's great. That is cool.
Very cool.
That's nice.
Cool.
Well, good luck with that project.
Thanks. Don't ask me to report back in August. Or maybe do. I don't know. I'll let you know.
Oh, that's funny.
All right, Ben, do you have a rapid fire?
I would say maybe my rapid fire is, what are you most looking forward to for next year, for the fall? What is something that you've really missed this year and you're really looking forward to getting back to?
Singing and oral skills.
Yeah.
We're face to face, so we
so you're
haven't
there,
gotten
but
to
then
do-
you can't sing anything. That's got to be weird.
They've had to do all the singing online. So singing face to face in oral skills.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes, I would anything face to face. Actually,
Yes.
I've been completely
The broader
online,
answer,
completely
yeah.
synchronous, and so anything. I would even just take sitting in a room staring at each other. I'll take that. I'll take that. I'll take asking a question and blank stares, getting blank stares rather than just getting blank Zoom boxes, and like you can unmute yourself or, feel free to put it in the chat. And so that's what I'm looking for. Just anything face to face. Cause and I had such a great Theory 3, Theory 4 group, this past year. And that's been one of probably my biggest regrets is not having them in class, because they actually were pretty fun over Zoom, which is kind of hard to do. And I'm like, man, they would have been a great class to be able to interact with, face to face. So just
should have a gathering or something.
We might have a gathering. We might do a little gathering. In the fall. They actually did a little thank you thing. Like, I don't know if you've seen people do that post things so not to brag, but so we had our last theory 4 class on Wednesday, and the person who always puts something in the question in the chat puts the question. He's like, I have a question on something you covered last week. She puts it in the chat right as class begins. So of course I'm like, all right, before we get going, what was the question? And she's like, well, this isn't really a question, but we just wanted to, thank you. So they all turned their cameras on and had little thank you signs. Aww. And oh, so precious.
So sweet.
And so
Aww,
sweet.
I love that.
I know. Aww. So I felt like I actually may have made a difference this semester.
Students care and faculty care.
Yes. And so we care too. But so that's what I'm looking forward to.
That's
just
awesome.
Seeing anyone's face.
I used to always go for my number one ranking on Rate My Professor. I used to always try to go for humor to be my top.
Do people still do that?
I don't know.
Oh, they definitely do. Yeah. As someone who advises students, they're like, no, I've already looked up all the Old Testament professors on Rate My Professor. And I want this one. I'm like, oh, that's still a thing, huh? Oh. I don't read mine ever. So
I try to stay off of there, but years ago I did look, and I used to try to get humor to be my top, and then it would always say caring. And then
that's a good one.
Everyone would always say, you should be so happy to have caring as your top. I said, yeah, I guess I should. I guess I'll settle for caring as my top.
Oh, typical theorist. You're like, can't care. Caring? No way. There's no caring in theory. Well, I think we're about wrapped up for this episode. Thank you. So thank you again, every one of our listeners. We will be back this summer. We're going to be posting some, I don't know what we're calling them, summer shorts, summer shorts. I don't know, but we're planning on making just some small video or small podcast episodes where we talk about just strategies for teaching, basic concepts. Maybe we'll come together and have some ideas for maybe, teaching borrowed chords or some kind of fundamental thing, just to kind of give some ideas and again, share ideas with you all. And if you have any suggestions, you can put something on our Facebook page, and we sometimes check that. And maybe we'll get a website. I don't know. We're kind of just flying by the seat of our pants. And some swag. We've thought about note totes, note totes. So if you think that's a good idea, please put that on our Facebook page that you want a note doctor's tote bag, a note tote to put all your notes. All right. Well, we will be back this summer with some other shorter episodes, and then in the fall we will be back with season 2 with some new guests and some exciting things coming up. We have some exciting plans already in the works, and I look forward to sharing those in the fall.
Yeah, it's been great.
Yeah.